Here it is, another episode of the Infinite Banter podcast. What is going on? My name is Mark Jolliffe, also known as DJ Soundwave. Thanks for checking out the show. Really excited about this one. Been looking forward to doing this episode for a while now. We got author and artist Jeffrey Brown on to talk about his latest projects. One in particular, Batman, Robin, and Howard Summer Breakdown. Real fun book. Got a chance to read it, of course, before I talked to Jeffrey. And he's a best-selling author of books like Darth Vader and Son, which I also have a copy of. I got it a few years back, and that's kind of what sparked me to reach out to Jeffrey, get him to come on and talk about his work. And he's done lots of graphic novels and about superheroes and kids and cats and all kinds of things. So stay tuned. Really excited to have Jeffrey on the show today talking about his work. And hopefully you guys out there get a chance to pick up some of his books. Definitely had a lot of fun talking with Jeffrey Brown, and stay tuned. We'll get that interview coming up here shortly. But on the last episode, before we go forward, we go back, and I had actor Theodis Crane. Many of you remember him from The Walking Dead. He's been on this show before. He came on again with Pamela Davis Nolan, who also was a previous guest, and she's the writer and director of the short film Room for Dessert, and Theodis Crane plays the lead role in that. He's also a producer on that short film. So if you didn't get a chance to play that episode, obviously go back and play it. But here's a clip from that episode where both of them are talking about that project here on the Infinite Banter podcast. Flashback.
Also looking into finding producers to, again, this is our proof of concept for the feature film. So I'm going to be diligently working on that and finishing up the script for Room for Dessert, the feature film, and starting the process all over again.
Pam had hit me up about this a couple of years before we actually got into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of always in the background. She gave me a little bit of info about where it was so far. So when she said it's time, I was like, all right, let's go ahead and do it. So the thing about Pam is when I first moved to New Orleans, she was the first person to hire me as an actor. She was the first person to put me in a lead in it, play this year at the Fringe Festival. And so from then it was just like, all right, well, I'm gonna rock with you because you see some good things that I need you to, in order to get out there. So like, yeah, let's go ahead and collaborate. And so whenever Pam just, I was like, yeah, let's do that. Because I also love the way Pam writes. You're really starting to think about who this character is, what that character's been through, and different directions they could have gone. And we talked about that at length a number of times.
I definitely encourage everybody to go and check out that last episode with the creators of the short film Room for Dessert. Pamela Davis Nolan and Theodis Crane. Had a lot of fun talking with them, and a lot of serious subject matter as well with that film. So if you get a chance, check it out. Always excited when I get to interview somebody and then they come back on when either the project is done or we go back and kind of recap what happened with it. So it was really cool to have them both back on here to talk about that short film. And if you want to find it, follow Pamela Davis Nolan or Room for Dessert on Instagram. And she said you just DM her and she'll send you a link to that film. It's only 18 minutes long, and it's really powerful. In that 18 minutes, a lot happens, and it's hard to walk away from that and not feel something. So definitely follow Theodis Crane, Pamela Davis Nolan, look for Room for Dessert on Instagram, and definitely check out what they're doing. That short film is amazing. Make sure you seek it out, Room for Dessert. But we got room for comic books and illustrations and graphic novels here on the Infinite Banter podcast. Jeffrey Brown is on the show today to talk about his current work and his past work. He's done a lot of graphic novels and stuff for Star Wars and superheroes and things of that nature. Really a big fan of his work, and couldn't wait to get him to come on here to talk about how he got started doing the books and things that he does. So definitely stay tuned. Jeffrey Brown will be coming up shortly here on the Infinite Banter podcast. And this podcast, you can find it on all platforms. Rate and review it. Make sure you check out the Spotify playlist and the poll questions. You can follow the show on Instagram and Facebook, as well as Twitter, X, or whatever it's called now, at Infinite Banter Podcast. And check out our sponsor, super7.com/Infinite Banter Podcast. You go to Super 7, they've got all kinds of cool merch on there. I must have about 20 different hip-hop figures from there. There's a couple of Rocky and Bruce Lee figures I bought from Super 7. They've got some G.I. Joe ones, and I've been on the fence about, I think I need a Snake Eyes. I don't have a Snake Eyes. I think I need one. I couldn't find a Storm Shadow one, but maybe they have it. But definitely go on there. Check out super7.com/Infinite Banter Podcast. Proud sponsor of this show right here. All right, let's get into it. Jeffrey Brown is on the show. We're going to talk about his graphic novels and his most recent one, Batman, Robin, and Howard, Summer Breakdown. But before we do anything, the show never begins until the one and only King from Queens, DMC, he gets on, he says this, and now it's official.
Yo, what's up? This is me, DMC, the K-I-N-G, the greatest MC in history. And right now, you're listening to Infinite Banter, because we will banter on forever, because this is the only place for all of y'all to ever be. I be Infinite Banter.
You're tuned into the Infinite Banter podcast. I'm Mark Jolliffe, and I'm really excited to bring on my guest. He's known for best-selling books like Darth Vader and Son and Jedi Academy series, as well as Luke and Andy Neanderthal and Space Time. Currently, he has 2 books out now, Kids Are Still Weird and Batman, Robin, and Howard, Summer Breakdown. Welcome to the show, cartoonist, author, artist, and fellow Chicagoan, Jeffrey Brown. What's up, Jeffrey?
How's it going?
Good,
Thanks for having
man.
me.
I got to go back a little bit. So my daughter, who turned 5 in June, before she was born, nobody knew if it was going to be a boy or a girl, and my brother bought me Darth Vader and Son as a gift. She's a girl, but she still likes Star Wars like I do, so it still worked out. But that's how I was introduced to your work, and I read that book. I read it again yesterday, and there's just so many little things for all you Star Wars nerds. It's so great, the humor and just the idea of Darth Vader finally deciding to be a dad.
Yeah.
And taking on that role. Talk about not just that book, but how you got started in doing comics and illustrating and all that.
Yeah, I mean, Star Wars is actually it's a long journey, but my career actually started when I was a kid loving Star Wars, basically. Like when I was a kid, it was Star Wars and Marvel comics were the 2 big things. And I would just draw like Star Wars and Marvel superheroes all the time. And with Star Wars, even though it was a movie, one of the things that I really loved about it was there's all these books and trading cards with all the concept art and the storyboard art. And so this idea that I could be involved with Star Wars, but through drawing was always like kind of a cool idea.
Right.
But, over time, I grew up, went to art school, thought I was going to be like a serious artist, and was getting my Master of Fine Arts and started doing some autobiographical comics, adult relationship stories, just about awkward everyday moments. And I was doing those when I had the opportunity to do something for Google for their homepage. They had the idea of doing something with Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and how awkward an everyday moment would be between the 2 of them. And so normally there's a whole team of people at Google that create the Google Doodles, but every once in a while they'll invite an outside artist to draw something. And I'd met the guy that runs the Doodle team at some point, and he called me up and was like, here's the idea, like we think you'd be perfect to do this. And so I did up a bunch of sketches, and most of which ended up in the first book. But in the end, Google decided like that they weren't going to use the idea for whatever reason, and which at first was super disappointing. But then I realized, one of my publishers, Chronicle Books, has done a lot of Star Wars books. Maybe they could take this idea to Lucasfilm, and we could see if we could make a whole book out of this. And so that's what we did, and Lucasfilm liked it, and the rest is history. So
yeah, I was going to say, taking it to Lucasfilm, I think just that idea probably excited you too, right? And to know that, well, if they like it, now you got something, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I knew that if you're not going to be able, I wasn't just going to be able to send something into Lucasfilm like, hey, I've got this idea. Like if Lucasfilm, especially now with Disney, if that was their submission policy, nothing would ever happen. Like everyone's job would just be reading submissions, right? So it was fortunate that I had the relationship with Chronicle, and then they had the relationship with Lucasfilm to kind of have that door open. And the main point of the book for me was writing for adults like myself who grew up with Star Wars and were now having kids.
Right.
And so as a Star Wars fan, I was fairly confident that that Lucasfilm would like the idea, whether or not they were up for having it be a book was the question mark.
Yeah.
But it was a period before Disney had purchased Lucasfilm, and they were still open maybe a little more to doing some things kind of outside the box. And it was kind of the right timing and the right situation and everything that it all just came together.
Yeah, it's like everything the galaxies had to come together, right, for
Yes.
this to work out. And, when I read that book now, and you touched on something there, when you're a father, like I said, I got this book before my daughter was born, 5 years ago, but I picked it up yesterday. I mean, even stuff now that I'm reading, because after 5 years of having a little one running around, like the privacy one is my favorite, because I don't know how many times I'm in the bathroom or in the shower or something, and she'll just open the door and come in there and start telling me about something that's exciting for her. It's like, you got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that are just so relatable, and I'm sure that's part of what got you to write it, because you're relating to a lot of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, so at the time my son was 4 years old, and I was just basically just pulled everything just straight from life. And I mean, coming from a history of doing autobiographical comics, I've always been interested in work that feels personal. So even if I'm going to do something like Star Wars, I want it to be personal in a way beyond just like the fact that like I love Star Wars and have known these characters my whole life and all that.
And I wanted to ask you too, because you said earlier you started drawing. Who were some of your favorite ones to draw early on? Was it always Darth Vader? Was it Luke? And who were some of the characters you really had an attachment to?
I mean, Ewoks were big.
Oh, cute ones,
anything from Hoth. Like I love drawing like the Rebel soldiers and AT-ATs and snow speeders and Yoda also. And then beyond that, just Hoth, Ewoks, and Yoda are probably like the big three when I look through those old drawings.
So should we be looking for a Grandpa Palpatine book? I don't know if I want it. I don't know if anybody wants that, because it's controversial. Not many people like that storyline, but it's an obvious one.
Yeah, it's tough. Like with the books, I've got to find the right kind of what's the word? Like just the right kind of idea to fit everything together. So Darth Vader and Son was easy because it's a little obvious,
right?
And then Vader's little princess, like then it's just going to Princess Leia and adding. The most recent one is Mandalorian and Child with Grogu and Mandalorian. It's a similar kind of parenting storyline, but Grogu is younger than in the book, and it's like because it's like a surrogate parent. There's
a little bit
like
different. Yeah.
It's just there's just like a slight difference. So it's like finding that right spot to make all the jokes work for me as I'm creating it is tough. And so I'd actually thought about like the grandparents angle. Actually, when I was working on Ray and Pals, so the book with the sequel trilogy, and the like, it just didn't seem to click right for me. Like I just didn't find the right kind of entry point to fit in the grandparents aspect.
You can't force it.
Yeah.
To use the word force. You can't force it in there, pun intended. You've got to let it happen naturally, right? Yeah. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
You can't try.
You can only do or do not, sir. Yeah. It's screwing up all the lines. But yeah, I mean, like I said, that the Darth Vader and Son book is my introduction to your work. And, once I read that, I was like, wow, this is really great. I need to follow up and look at more stuff. I need to get the Princess Leia version you were talking about earlier. And like I said, being a parent, it's just so relatable. And obviously you found a way to connect that. And is that kind of your niche? Do some people come to you whenever you hear reactions of these books like, oh, I'm a father or I'm a mother and I have kids and this book really spoke to me, as well as being a Star Wars fan or a Batman fan?
Yeah. The biggest and maybe like the best response that comes to me is, and it's from both sides, both parents, and I've had, like adult kids, so like kids in college, so I guess not really kids, like kids to me because I'm old now, but like you have people who are like connecting with their parents through the books, and parents who are connecting with their kids through the books. And so it's kind of like this this great thing where the books bring families together, and which is really like kind of a cheesy thing to to say, but it, and it wasn't like, again, that wasn't my plan. My plan, I wanted it to be I was writing for basically myself, and I was just having fun drawing Star Wars, right? But yeah, I think that's the big thing is how the books have kind of connected different generations
Oh, for sure. And, you talked about bringing families together. And, me and my daughter will watch Star Wars when it's on. Like TNT will have like a weekend where they're just like playing all of them. And we'll pick and choose which ones we leave on. And, and it does bring you together. And she likes it, and when Mermaid's not on or, name your Disney princess thing, that's probably more important to her. But, she'll let Daddy watch Star Wars or Superman if it comes, whatever I'm into, sometimes it'll pop up. And I think like you're doing with the books, it's like you're creating both worlds, and people who grew up like me with comic books and superheroes and all that, and kids can also get into it. I think there's something to that, and I think that's why this book resonates with me and a lot of other people, and obviously with yourself, you're getting the great reactions you have. And man, this Batman book is really great. I just finished reading it the other day, so I just want to get the title to everybody: Batman, Robin, and Howard Summer Breakdown. And it's a story. It's not just little humorous little panels like you've done in the past. This is actually a full story here. And I really like the dynamic of, it's similar with the Darth Vader ones. Like Batman's a struggling parent. He's trying to figure out you could relate this to everyday life. Batman's, he's got the mother of his child is not really with him, and Talia, and they're kind of figuring out how to raise Damien, and this kid Howard is in the mix. And talk about just the concept of this book and how you first came to the idea of doing something like this.
Yeah, so DC had years back when they first started making a push to have more younger reader books specifically, and there's an editor who had come from working with Disney, who knew my work, and she was inviting different authors, also like not authors who weren't like your traditional like DC Marvel writers and artists, and she asked if I would be interested in doing something, and like I was always more of a Marvel guy, to be honest, but except for Batman. And so I was like, yeah, I want to do a Batman book. And so then again, it's like, finding like what is my Batman book. And what happened was I had this idea for a story about like two teenage kids, and the idea would be like a comedy movie that I would write someday, like 10 Things I Hate About You or Can't Hardly Wait, like those classic teen rom-coms. But the idea was that like there's this hotshot kid at a high school, and then a new kid comes, and the new kid's even more of a hotshot, so they have this, the rivalry, and even though like everyone else is like, you guys should totally be best friends. What's going on here? And so I had this kind of basic storyline, and I realized like, oh, what if like I took that story and one of those kids was Damian Wayne, Robin, and he's like this new kid coming to this high school, and then I get to add Batman. And so it kind of came together like pretty quickly. And so the first book was kind of establishing the characters, the original Batman and Robin and Howard. And then I had signed on to do 2 books with DC. So the second book I was like, well, there's all these other DC characters I could explore. And so I was trying to like come up with an idea. And again, like as we've mentioned, like trying to force it.
Right.
And then I just kept thinking like, you know what, like, why am I I really just want to write another Batman and Robin and Howard book. And so I kind of took some of the elements of one of the ideas I had and reworked it for Robin and Howard. And I think again, this is another book too, where I try to bring in the personal. So like with Darth Vader and Son, my older son was 4 years old when I was writing that. And then when I started working on the Batman and Robin and Howard stories, my older son was, in middle school, high school.
Oh, I see.
And so I kind of base Batman on myself, where it's like, not that I think I'm cool, but when I go speak at elementary schools, like the kids there think I'm really cool, right? Like they're like, this is the guy that wrote these books, and that's really cool. But my son does not think I'm cool. Like he's like, oh my God, like I am totally embarrassing to him.
Right.
And so like that was like kind of the basic idea. Is like, it's like Batman is like he's like so awesome. But to his teenage son,
Shoulder
Batman
shrug.
is like, oh my gosh, Dad, why do you keep telling everyone you're Batman?
Wow, now that you say that, reading this book is giving me a whole different perspective on the rooftop visits they would have, where Batman's like, all right, get up on the rooftop, we gotta have a chat.
Yeah.
There's criminals down there. No, listen to me. You gotta listen to your mother, and
Yeah, so I just tried to channel like
That's
that
great.
like awkward dad moments. And then it's just it's fun to draw Batman and Robin. And
yeah, that's awesome. And I related a lot to when Talia's first brought into the book. Try not to spoil it too much for you guys. She comes in and she's kind of giving Batman a hard time about the cape. And to me, it felt like when I get a hard time about, because like the weather here in Chicago, it's that weird time of year where I don't know if I can still wear shorts. I don't know if I need to wear a coat. And, you know, sometimes I don't wear a coat and she, you know, the wife is like, where's your coat? Or I feel like that's kind of like that same thing, like talking about what I'm wearing or not wearing and how I'm wearing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's that same kind. I totally related to that whole giving him a hard time about the cape.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the same time, like, you know, like I think like it was interesting to kind of explore like those conversations, like where it's like it's a joke, but it's also like trying to write about like what is Batman and Talia's relationship, and you know, how does that affect Robin? And you know, so Robin is like, he knows like they're not really just talking about the cape, also like
right.
like this is like just like there's a weird energy here. I don't know what's happening. Like, get me out of here. But yeah, it's definitely that time of the year in Chicago where you go out in shorts and a sweatshirt, then you're sweating and then you're freezing, and like every hour is different.
I'm one of those that gets hot real easy. I don't know if it's like this over 40 thing, but like I start the day with pants and then I come inside. I'm like, I'm hot, and I put on shorts, and then I'm crying that I'm cold later. So yeah, I relate with Batman. I get it, because then you get yelled at, like, what are you wearing? Why are you wearing that? You're gonna get sick. And then the little one sees you wearing that and thinks it's okay to dress like it's 90 degrees. So it's I got it. Yes, Talia definitely gave Batman a couple of jabs there, but I like the fact that she's trying to connect with Robin, but she's having a hard time because she's, you know, coming at her from an angle like, I'm not used to this whole thing. I'm used to, you know, having a bunch of ninjas do whatever I want and cause havoc. So it was really cool how they're working in the shop or whatever.
Yeah, that's also something like I tried to pull. So I have two sons, so sometimes it's like my wife is like, she's the odd one out because we're all gonna, you know, play Super Smash Brothers, and she's like, I just don't get it.
Right.
You know, and so they like there's things that she connects with our sons with that I don't actually connect with them on the same way. And so like just that idea of like being a parent and trying to find like where's our common ground, and so then it's like it's funny because you would think that Damian being Robin and like you think ninjas would be like the obvious thing, and so I wanted to flip that, and instead of like she can't actually connect with him through ninjas.
just when you say it out loud, it just sounds funny, right? It's just that idea. And I like Howard being in the story too, because it kind of gives you just like the normal kid just trying to coexist in this world of like, you know, Batman, Talia, Damian, and you know, and then there's like the little superhero group that's in the park there, and he's kind of like, for me, it felt like I kind of see it through his eyes more than anybody because he's the most relatable character in there, and and he's trying to find his. Is there somebody like a Howard in your life? Was there like a best friend of one of your sons or somebody you grew up with? Is he based on anybody?
I mean, not specifically, I guess. I mean, maybe he's like a amalgamation of some of both my son's friends. I mean, more it was like trying to come up with a character who kind of illuminate Damian and Bruce Wayne's relationship. So, because I think one of the things that maybe happens in the Batman comics is like it's so much about Batman and Damian, but you don't have anything to put that up against. And so like here's a contrast to see, and then also bringing Howard, you know, like Howard comes over to hang out at the house and at Wayne Manor, and like putting him in that situation and lets the reader see that relationship between Batman and Robin like a little more intimately, like where like you're seeing it up close in a way that is beyond just like we're gonna go out and fight crime.
Yeah, I really liked his dynamic, and like I said, it was kind of like a way for us, well, everybody's reading it's probably not superheroes, so we're reading it and kind of feeling like, okay, I can see how he might look at that world of, you know, the Batcave. Your description of the Batcave in there, I think it's on page 100, is one of my favorites. I've never heard this before. Subterranean space for flying mammals that use sonar. Just bravo, salute, and it's not really a question or anything. It's just, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things in Batman like you could like describe in there, like, oh, that's the Batcave. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's the most descriptive. It was almost like something you'd see on Jeopardy. Like that would be the answer. Like, what is the Batcave? Yes, correct. You know, that would be so pretty pretty great. And I like the, in the back half of the story, Lois Lane comes into the story and Clark Kent for a little bit. And I've noticed as I gotten older, I've gone back to being a bigger Superman fan than I was as a kid. He was the best. It was always him and Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, when you're like a teenager, you're like, oh, Batman's cooler because he's more darker, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I've noticed I've kind of gone back to liking more Superman stuff. So I was really excited when I read that they were going to have like a Metropolis kind of storyline in there as well. So you talk about, bringing Superman in. Well, he wasn't really in it, but you know what I mean? Like having that angle in there with Lex Luthor and all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that about Batman is, this is something that has come up in the comics, is that he doesn't have any powers. Like he's rich, but, and so with this book, especially like in the first book, you see it from Howard, but in this book, you also have, like, there's the three kids in the park that they meet, but also Lois Lane, and the idea that being a superhero or doing something heroic, like, there's everyday things that you can do. Like, you don't need superpowers, right? And you don't need to, like, be super rich, like, and have a bunch of gadgets and things. And so at first I was like, oh, I'd like to put Superman in somehow. But again, it's, this is a bit of a spoiler, I guess. But it's like another thing where I wanted to twist it where it's like, oh, it's not Superman they're looking for. They're actually looking for Lois because they need like some investigative reporting. And and I just thought that was like just a funny idea that oh, sorry, Clark, you're not, you haven't won any Pulitzers. So you're not quite who we need here.
And I like how she runs on her credentials too, and they're talking about their superpowers. And she's like, "Well, I went to school, and I was an intern, and did a journalist." She's like saying, "I actually worked to get this, this spot." So I like how it kind of made her. It kind of put her up a little bit higher. It's like, well, she's the star over there at the Daily Planet. Clark is just he's kind of sitting at the desk like, "Oh well, Lois's turn again."
Yeah.
So I really like having that storyline in there, and it really kind of raised the stakes for that third act, I guess, of the book. So it was really cool. And like everybody listening, you got to make sure you go check out this book. And the Superman angle, then you got Batman, and like I said, there's so many things that I can relate to as a parent. And like Batman's kind of grumpy, because I got that part of me. There's always that grumpy side. So where he doesn't know how to talk to the kids necessarily at every moment, or so again, just really relatable with this one and the Star Wars stuff, and of course all the other stuff you're doing now, and of course done in the past. I was reading on your Instagram, you've got Metamorphoffice. I hope I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
And I was checking that out. It really took me back because I grew up loving The Far Side by Gary Larson, and it was like, wow, this is kind of making me feel like this is that same lane for me, like that same kind of comedy. Talk about doing that, and I just like that whole aspect of it, just taking everyday things and twisting it a little bit and making it a little comical.
Yeah, so this was, like, for anyone who hasn't seen it, the Metamorphoffice, it's a comic I post every Monday, and it's basically like mixing like the movie The Fly, with
perfect Jeff Goldblum movie,
with
right?
with The Office, and also with the Franz Kafka Metamorphosis story. So it's like, like this office worker wakes up as a fly, and then he's just at work as a fly every day. And it was like an idea that I had for a while, and I was just like I needed something creatively to just like a side project. I hit on this idea if I just, I can just do it one a week, so it's low pressure. It's drawn super rough. I don't even erase all my pencils and things, and I actually planned out the rest of it, so I kind of have the rest of the year planned out.
That's great,
because that's like, as I get closer to further along in a project, I usually like go faster, and there's like a little creative burst. Yeah, so it's just been a great like low pressure thing, and just like a challenge for myself. So it's 4 panels, and so I've got to like figure out the joke each week, and figure out the kind of the pacing of it within those 4 panels, kind of setting a parameter for myself. But yeah,
the idea of the fly having to go to work, right? That's I never thought of that before. It was like, I didn't see the original one, but the Jeff Goldblum one from the 80s, right? It's like, what happens after, right? Does he go to work? Does he get a job somewhere? He's in an office. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I love that movie. I'm a big Jeff Goldblum fan.
Yeah.
That's another movie where it's like you only see him in his apartment, basically
Right.
his apartment with all his mad science lab. But
Right.
and so I was like, I kind of took that, and I mean, I guess you see my character Greg at home occasionally, but like basically it's like always in the office, always just in his cubicle for the most part.
And is that challenging too? Because you talked about how you have the 4 panels, and basically you got to come up with the joke, set it up, and then get the punchline. And it sounds like, oh, that should be easy, right? You've got 4, but that's probably more of a challenge than it sounds like.
Yeah, so another thing I decided was that Greg wouldn't talk. So like that's challenging. So like sometimes I've got a joke and it's like if Greg could deliver this line, it would be so much easier. But like that's not the rules of the world that I set up. So I've got to figure out like ways for either him to like kind of do it through body language or action, or have other characters around him, things. So that's the biggest challenge is kind of working within that limitation of him not talking. And then the 4 panels, like for the most part, once you kind of have that rhythm down, it actually gets pretty easy. Although I think I might like start a new kind of side project, like weekly thing that'll be a little more open, and then I might leave myself room to like change the number of panels. Yeah, it's been like a fun side thing in between, like, you know, the other projects like Batman books or the books I'm working on now. I'm actually working on a Hulk middle grade book.
Awesome.
There's a different set of limitations and deadlines and things, so it's good to have like something totally different to jump back and forth to.
Yeah, you probably need something to kind of get you back and forth, right? If you're always in the same thing all the time, maybe it gets kind of, I don't know if boring is the right word, but mundane or something. So you branch out.
Yeah, it's not boring. But I had this happen with Star Wars. So so I did Darth Vader and Son, and then I started doing the Jedi Academy series. And in 4 years, I had done 7 books. So I had done 4 Darth Vader and Son style books, and then 3 Jedi Academy books, and then was doing extra drawings for calendars and magazines. And so like I'd done so much Star Wars, and I was like, I love Star Wars. I love drawing Star Wars, but I'm not set up to just do this. Like this can't be my only thing.
No, it makes total sense. I mean, similar with this podcast, I try to do different episodes all the time because I get, again, not boring, it's not the right word, but you kind of feel like you have to branch out and just try other stuff because you don't want to just be one-dimensional, I guess. But you always fall back on what you like, and Star Wars that's a good place to fall back to whenever you need something.
Yeah, at this point, it's nice because now I've like the last little while I've been doing like a Star Wars book every 2 or 3 years, and it's like, okay, like that's enough where like when I go back to doing something for Star Wars, it still feels fresh enough, and I'm not like just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what else I can do with Darth Vader and Yoda.
Right. Or Grandpa Palpatine, which I don't know if we'll ever see that. But back to Metamorphophosis. I totally ruined that. Is there going to be like a full collected edition of that at some point, you think? Do you think that'll be in a book form? I
mean, maybe. We'll see. Once I finish it up, like, you know, maybe it'll be like maybe I'll make it as a mini comic or something. It's like, it's another interesting thing is the pace of reading. So I've kind of set it up, and we'll see how successful I am in this, but like there's a certain pace to reading it 1 a week that's different than reading it every day. And I've noticed this like in reading like maybe like collections of Garfield or Calvin and Hobbes, where it's like I have the big 2-volume hardcover slipcase Calvin and Hobbes collection, and somehow that's harder to read than the little paperback editions collections. And those were harder to read than just like reading it every day in the newspaper. Is like a different experience. So, but I think maybe I'll like reformat it so it's like, you know, 4 panels in a square layout, and
so you're almost reading it the same way that you'd have done it every day, the original way. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that takes me back to, like I said, the Far Side earlier. I used to have the Rip Away calendar, and it would just be you rip it away, you'd read a little comic thing, and you rip it away. Where I do have the gallery books. Yeah, and they are like, it's like an encyclopedia, and it takes time to, you know, you can only read so much. So yeah.
Yeah, I have those too. Talking about those making me want to go down and
Oh my
lug them
God.
up. They're in the basement because they were in the basement for the kids to like have access to in their little playroom.
That's awesome.
But I don't know if I can bring them all the way up to my studio.
Now, I grabbed one yesterday because I have a bookshelf in the living room area, so they are out where I can grab them. And after I was reading some of your stuff, I was like, I'm getting this Gary Larson vibe. Let me go ahead and pull some of these out. And I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't read these in, decades. My grandpa used to buy them for me because that's where we connected. That was like our thing. He liked them, I liked them, and then he was buying them for me. So it kind of goes back to the whole thing at the beginning when having you on here about talking about just the family aspect of it. Even if it sounds corny, there's something with comics and illustrations and movies that kind of bring us all together in a way, and you can make that relate to the everyday grind of being a father or a son or all that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so cool, man. What's coming up next? I know you mentioned the Hulk book. What else can people expect coming next from you?
Well, yeah, I mean the newest thing is as far as coming out, although I finished drawing it a long time ago, is The Kids Are Still Weird. Maybe by the time this is posted, it'll be in stores and available, but that's another book too where it's kind of sprung out of thinking about being a parent, and the Darth Vader and Son books are like they're funny, but like sometimes it's like a lot of like finding humor in those moments of frustration.
Right.
Whereas the kids are still weird is about just the pure entertainment value of children and like how funny and entertaining they are. And so it's just basically like collection of just humorous moments of my younger son. The original book was Kids Are Weird with my older son. And it's like that sweet spot of first learning to talk and putting sentences together and then, but they don't always make sense. But then sometimes they make so much sense. You're like, oh my gosh, you're like dropping wisdom bombs on my head.
Just these little bits of knowledge they're throwing at you. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I mean, a lot of people looked at the COVID time as like a bad time, and it was, of course. But when I was stuck in the house, that's when my daughter was turning 1, and she started crawling and talking and all that. So I have kind of like a mixed memory of that 3 months or whatever. And it was like what you're talking about. She's saying little words and saying little things and saying things that I say that like, she caught on to that. I better be careful. So, yeah, there's a lot to that, and yeah, hopefully when this episode drops, your book will be out because I said at the beginning that it's out now. So look for it in case the timing is not
October 15th. So whatever day you're listening to this, if it's after October 15th, 2024, you should be able to find it.
That'd be awesome if I couldn't get this out till like the 2026 or something. Like, it's timeless.
At this point, it's out of print.
It's out of print. He's moved on. Now he's writing other stuff. He's doing war novels and political books. No, he's a pundit. But where can they find all your work? I mean, do you have a website? Follow you online?
So I do have a website, jeffreybrowncomics.com. I have to admit, it's like not like it's enough for me to update the events and releases.
Right.
So there isn't a lot about more recent projects, but you can contact me through there, and I have a list of upcoming projects and events. And then on Instagram at JeffreyBrownRQ. So like we talked about the Metamorphoffice this year, every Monday there's a new comic, and then I try to post like lots of process and behind the scene things, and that can be hard because working with licensed projects, like it's either I can't talk about it while I'm working on it, and then when it's done, then it's like, well, I'm not working on it, so I can't post anything about what I'm working on, or the approval process is just like too cumbersome. But on Instagram, I try to post things, and then pictures of my cat sometimes.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the cat. You've got the cats are weird, right? That's also something you've done.
Yeah,
they are weird. That's
yeah. I love, like, I'm a big cat person. Although we also have a dog now, so now I'm also a dog person apparently. But
apparently,
but yeah, it's if you look through my books, like there's a cat in just about every book. Although in Batman and Robin and Howard, I was like one of the things like I was like, it didn't make sense for Damien to have a pet cat.
I was gonna say, I don't remember a cat being in there. Yeah, you didn't include it. Right?
Yeah, no, he has a pet dog named Dribble.
Right.
And yeah, Dribble like is actually super fun to draw, and he plays a role in the second book, so he's kind of a fun side character.
I have 2 pet turtles, and they are weird too. So
okay, turtles are great.
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. But cats
Maybe
are definitely
as,
weird.
Yeah, not as dynamic and action oriented as cats, perhaps.
No.
But
yeah, they're not. They're not getting into things. Because I've had both in my life, cats and dogs, and it's kind of mixed. Cats are different for people who have cats. Obviously, are listening. You have that one cat that's the nicest in the world, and the one cat that would rather give you the finger and tell you, "Hey, I need some food and leave me alone. I'm gonna go scratch the couch now." I mean, there's all kinds. They're all over. Yeah. Were you a Heathcliff and Garfield fan growing up? I'm assuming so.
I mean, I was a big Garfield fan. And so, like, my nod to Garfield is in the Metamorphoffice.
Right, in the background, yeah.
The character Greg has a poster that says, "I hate Mondays," which is why I tied that into, like, I would just post it on Mondays. And so, Garfield, Heathcliff, Crazy Cat.
Tom and Jerry, I would imagine, would be another one.
Tom and Jerry, Calvin and Hobbes. I mean, I don't know if you consider Hobbes a cat. I mean, he's a tiger.
Yeah, that's cool. It
species
works.
Of cat.
Right.
Yes.
Was it Top Cat? Wasn't that a cartoon where he's like living in like a junkyard?
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I remember watching.
I'm gonna look that up.
Yeah, there was like a group of them too. I think there's like 4 or 5 of them running around in like I think it was a junkyard. I could be wrong. They had some like police phone they would use to call each other or something. It's been a while since I've seen it, but or Sylvester. There's one from Looney Tunes. So. Yeah, a lot of good cats out there. Man, it's been I got to ask you this. You're from the Chicago area. Are you a sports fan? I mean, are you Cubs or Sox? I'm a Cubs fan. Not that it matters either way, but
So I'm from Michigan originally.
Oh, okay.
So
I'll go Tigers then because they're doing good so far.
Yeah, I was never a big baseball fan. I was always into hockey. So I'm still a Red Wings fan.
Red Wings. So there you go.
The Blackhawks, like my sons are more Blackhawks fans than Red Wings fans. So like Blackhawks are kind of my backup team to root for.
We got Chris Chelios. He played on both teams and was a big star.
Chelios, and now Kane is on the Red Wings. So
that's right.
That's fun.
Okay.
Yeah. So and I like football. I mean, I root so I was a Lions fan growing up with Barry Sanders, and then Barry Sanders retired, and I was like,
"You're done.
Football is dead. Football is dead to me." But then I moved to Chicago, and it's like right when Devin Hester
good time
started
to get
his career, and like that was just an amazing career to watch here. It was like just so many fun moments. So I'll still watch the Bears and
the Lions are good now, so they're on TV quite a bit. If you ever decided to go back, put on your Barry Sanders jersey and watch a Lions game.
I'll still watch them and root for them, and I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of a fair weather fan because my wife's from Kansas, and so I get to root for the Kansas City Chiefs.
They won last night. So
whoever's winning, I'll root for.
There you go.
I guess no.
Whoever's winning, that works too. I mean, just go for the team because being a Cubs fan, they're not in the playoffs, so I don't know who to root for the baseball playoffs, and then hockey's. Then it just started a couple days ago, so.
It starts today, actually.
Oh, is it? Okay.
So today is the regular. Well, no,
there was a game outside of the country, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then there was one game, and then there's another 3 today. So
there you go.
Off.
Go Red Wings.
Wings.
Yeah, man. That's one of the original 6, right? If I remember correctly. So the Hawks and Red Wings, that's a good rivalry, and I'm sure you get excited every time they play each other. And maybe in the household, you guys are fighting over who would win. Your sons are more Blackhawks fans, so
yeah, they're just not so invested in general. So it's
okay, you're good then.
So it's like it's never a problem.
There you go. Well, that's awesome, man. So everybody listening, make sure you check out. I mean, Jeffrey's got so much work out there. Definitely check out the new Batman and Robin and Howard. That book is really great. I love it. Once again, throw out your website and how people could find your stuff.
Yeah, so JeffreyBrownComics.com and on Instagram at JeffreyBrownRQ.
Thanks so much, Jeffrey, for coming on the podcast. It was an honor having you on. And man, that Darth Vader and Son, that one really hit me. when I first got it, and being a
Thanks.
Star Wars nerd, it just hit all the right spots. So there's so many. I could go through every page with you and probably tell you how great the jokes are. But the most recent one with the privacy, when Darth Vader's in his I don't know what to call it, his sherbet head closing thing.
Meditation.
Right.
Meditation chamber.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go. So you got it right. And Luke is bothering him once again to come play with him. But thanks so much, Jeffrey. It was great having you on here, and definitely look forward to the next books you have coming out and everything going forward.
Yeah, thanks.
You got it. Thanks, Jeffrey. Really cool having Jeffrey Brown on the show here. I've been definitely a fan of his for a while. And I remember, as I said in the interview, when I first got that Darth Vader and Son book, before my daughter was born, before we even knew if it was going to be a boy or a girl, basically, it was really cool to have that book. I'm obviously a big Star Wars fan, but reading it now, 5 years into being a dad and everything, it just strikes a different chord as it did when I first read it, but even more now. It's more relatable because there's more instances where I can definitely relate to it even more. It's just crazy. And I really, really like this book and how he injects humor into it, and the idea of Darth Vader being a dad. And there are some good comic book dads out there. I was kind of researching it a little bit. The first one that came to mind that I think is probably the best comic book dad is Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead. As a matter of fact, I do want to talk about Walking Dead later on in the show, because there's the new Daryl Dixon show, season 2 started. I got to talk about it a little bit. So after I ramble here, we'll get into it towards the end here. But some other comic book fathers, of course, Magneto from the Marvel Comics. He's the dad of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Probably not the best dad in the world, right? Luke Cage should get a nod. He's a really good father in the comic books that he has. But I think the one that really stands out to me, and it stood out in the Superman movie as well as in the comics and everything, has to be Pa Kent, Jonathan Kent. He's not even his real dad, but just the way that relationship started Clark Kent into becoming, the man he was, and helping mold him when he became Superman. I had mentioned to Jeffrey Brown that, as a kid, Superman was like my idol. That's like the superhero I really liked. And as you get older, you start to like the darker ones. I was really into Batman and Daredevil and Moon Knight and stuff, and I still am. But as I'm getting older now, I'm starting to get that, I don't know what it is, that Superman's kind of creeping back in. Is like, man, I really wish they'd make a good Superman movie, and I wish they'd make him cool again. So definitely Jonathan Kent would get a big mention as far as comic book dads are concerned. So there's a few up the top of the head here. I didn't research it much. This is just something I just thought of as I was talking to Jeffrey. But I would say Rick Grimes has to be a big one. The guy fought zombies and everything for years and years, and just to keep that kid Carl alive. We're not talking about the show. I'm talking about the comic book, because the show is a totally different thing, and they made some bad choices, which we'll talk about very shortly here. So thanks again to Jeffrey Brown. Make sure you check him out, jeffreybrowncomics.com. Follow him on Instagram, Jeffrey Brown RQ. You can see everything he's up to on there. As he said, he's a little more active there than he is on his website, but definitely check out jeffreybrown.com and at Instagram, Jeffrey Brown RQ. And definitely check out his new book, Batman, Robin, and Howard Summer Breakdown. Check out his Jedi Academy series, Darth Vader and Son, and his Kids Are Weird series coming up soon. So once again, thanks to Jeffrey Brown for coming on the show.
Hey, this is Josh Michael of Walking Dead fame. You don't know who I am. You're listening to Infinite Banter.
Time for you to leave, assholes.
That is Kirk Acevedo telling me to get out of here, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. But before I go, like I mentioned a little bit ago, I do want to talk about the new season of Daryl Dixon. And if you don't want any spoilers, you might want to fast forward this. I'm guessing a lot of you aren't watching Walking Dead content anymore because you've tapped out a long time ago, or you're not even aware they're still doing stuff, and you're just kind of moving on to other things. It's very hard for a show to go on for more than a decade and still attract viewers and keep viewers. Especially, with some of the stuff they've done in the last few years. So I watched it, and I just have to speak on it a bit. It's only in episode 2. So the first season is Daryl Dixon, and he magically appears in France. Apparently, he got on a boat because they were hoarding American zombies, and they needed, non-zombies. Very, very gray how they describe how any of this happened. But he ends up in France. Okay, fine, I'll buy it, whatever. So season 2 is called Daryl Dixon 2. Wait, what is this shit called? Daryl Dixon season 2, The Book of Carol. It's a long title made me think of the Book of Boba Fett, and a lot of people didn't like the Book of Boba Fett. So Book of Carol, I think, might be worse. I didn't mind the Book of Boba Fett. I know a lot of people give it some critiques. There's aspects of it that I wish were better, but as a whole, I was fine with it. I was entertained. I'll move on. Boba Fett's alive. That's really all I wanted. Get him out of the Sarlacc pit. The rest of the stuff is kind of whatever. Anyway, getting back on subject here. So the Book of Carol is basically Carol saying, oh my God, where's Daryl? I got to find him. And somehow she goes from Georgia to Maine. See, what this show does, it makes me want to pull out a map because it's so illogical how these things happen. Just the ease that you can travel from Georgia to Maine to France. It's just bizarre to me. So he apparently went to Maine. I think he's looking for Rick. I don't even know why he went to Maine. I think that's what he was doing. She somehow ends up in Maine. I don't know how she found out that he was there. She shows up at some auto place where they're fixing cars. And if you saw season 1, Daryl was there. How she ended up there because she found some dude on the road who had the motorcycle. Very convenient. This show is very, very convenient. Some guy mumbles that they are taking people to France, and she's got to go to France now. Just from that little bit of information, she decides she's got to go to France. She's driving some car, and a plane is ahead of her, and she sees the plane, and she follows where the plane lands, bugs some guy who lives there, and manipulates him into taking her to France. It's very convenient that she finds out he's there, and she just so happens to be driving where a plane is flying in the zombie apocalypse. This is so nuts. So that's episode 1. I don't even want to get into the Daryl stuff because I don't need to. So, see, episode 2, they decide they have to stop in Greenland because they can't go straight to France. It's just too much of a journey. So they land there and just so happen to find a couple people who happen to have supplies, who happen to, everything's so convenient. They need fuel. They need to fix the fuel hose or something, and they land in a spot. The cool thing is they had some zombies that looked like Moss Man from He-Man. They had like the green moss over them, so I thought that was kind of cool. They're coming out of the ground. And they go to France eventually. From there, I'm skipping a lot of stuff because I'm trying to save you guys. So she just lands in France and just so happens to... I've never been to France, but from what I understand, it's a big place. A lot of people there. How are you going to find some dude there that you don't even know if he's actually there? And she, just kind of walks into town. And now I will give credit. The setting is really cool. To see the Eiffel Tower kind of burned out and decrepit and the buildings like that looks cool. They definitely put some money into that aspect of it. But the writing of this thing is, just gets from A to B. We're not going to get anywhere in between. We're not going to build towards anything. It's just, we got to get to France. She's going to be in France. We're not going to get any kind of, they're not going to make it difficult whatsoever. So she just walks the streets. She sees some truck. She gets on it. And then she's going to meet Daryl probably in the next episode. I mean, it just happens so fast. I've never been to France. I don't know how I am ever going to go there. It seems like it would be very hard for me to get there in modern times where there's planes and passports and things. So it's just in apocalypse. Just find some guy who's got a plane. Who, by the way, he said he found the parts and just put the plane together. Right. And also, I wouldn't just get on a plane, what is it? I don't know. What year is this in the zombie world? 10, 15 years after everything broke and became this world? You haven't been on a plane at least in that many years, and you're just going to get on one that some guy put together with, like an IKEA instruction set and an Allen wrench. Okay, I mean, whatever. I mean, this is, again, just so easy. The reason I'm bringing any of this up is, like, I want to enjoy the show, but when the stuff that's happening in it is just not realistic, at least within that world, it makes me have a hard time watching it. And I'm going to keep watching it because I'm a masochist for The Walking Dead. I'm just going to keep doing it until they finally pull the plug on this thing. But these last few years and these spin-off shows, everything is just way too convenient. In this giant country and world, they find people so easily, it just kind of turns me off. But here I am. I'm watching the Daryl Book of Carol show, part 2. So watch it if you want. It's okay if you don't. I'm here to tell you about it if you care. For me, the stuff they're doing on The Walking Dead and all these spin-off shows, it's basically what I liked about Z Nation. If those of you are not familiar, Z Nation was another zombie show. When Walking Dead came out, it really kind of made the zombie thing a bigger deal. And you had all these movies and TV series and such coming out trying to cash in on the phenomenon. There was a show on the Sci-Fi Channel called Z Nation, which I really liked. But it was very different from this show. Same premise, a group of survivors, try to find where they're going to stay and, survive all this, fairly easy thing to follow. But what Z Nation never did was it never took itself seriously. And they would do these stupid ideas. But because I knew that going into it, I didn't critique it. They had like zombies who were like made out of weed. And they had one of my favorite characters, Pasai Pao, played Cassandra, who ended up being like a zombie stripper. Like this stuff is nuts. But the show was supposed to be. Like it wasn't trying to be this like gripping reality and how do we handle humanity. It wasn't like that. It was like, look, we're going to do what Walking Dead does, but we're going to turn it on its ear and it's going to be nuts. And that's what I liked about it because it was refreshing and just so different. And there was like no rules or anything, which is bizarre. And that show ended up getting canceled and it's not on anymore. But, for the good 4 or 5 years it was on, it was fun to watch. It was definitely ridiculous. And there was times I'm like, why am I watching this? It's so kind of stupid. But whatever. At least I didn't think they were trying to be serious. Where Walking Dead was not that. It was like, okay, well, we're trying to do what would actually maybe would happen. Not anymore. Now they've become Z Nation, even if they don't think they are. They have done sillier stuff. And the stuff that's silly, it's just not plausible. That's why it's silly. If you're going to go all the way, go over the top completely. I think part of the problem with The Walking Dead is that they've run out of source material. They've already done everything in the comics. They have nothing. They have to write it for themselves now. Ha-ha. That's where the problem lies. They can't copy and paste anymore. There's no more comic book to take stories from. They've got to come up with their own ideas. Robert Kirkman didn't have characters going to France. It never happened. This is their own stuff. He didn't have Maggie and Negan doing a tag team mashup and going to New York and hanging out. He didn't do that stuff in the comics. Therefore, it's not in the comics. But on the show, yeah, we come up with our own ideas. And they're not good. But I'm going to keep watching. Go check out Z Nation if you haven't seen it. It's a fun zombie show. All right, that's it for me. I'm going to go to France and find some guy with a plane. Take me to Greenland, where there's 2 women there who want to repopulate the earth. So stupid. Why am I watching this shit? All right, that's it for me, the Infinite Banter Podcast. Followed on all platforms at Infinite Banter Podcast. Go on YouTube, type Infinite Banter. There's a few episodes on there. There's clips and all that stuff. Rate and review the show on Podchaser and Good Pods. I saw Good Pods just redid their app. It looks great. Go check out Good Pods if you get a chance. Podchaser is another good place. Apple Podcasts for rating and reviewing. I appreciate anybody who does that. Check out the Spotify poll questions, a playlist. And once again, big thanks to Jeffrey Brown. Check him out, jeffreybrown.com, or follow him on Instagram at jeffreybrownrq. And check out his latest book, Batman, Robin, and Howard, Summer Breakdown. And stay tuned. Kids Are Weird should be coming out soon. And check out all his past stuff as well. All right, that's it for me. Thanks for checking it out. Go watch the Book of Daryl and Carol. And until I do another one of these, I'm out.
Hey, asshole, get off the road.
Being on the Infinite Banter with my man Mark has been a pleasure.